Few kings have captured the world's imagination like Henry VIII of England. He is remembered for his 6 wives, his break with the Catholic Church, and his unshakable thirst for power. A Renaissance prince who became an autocratic king. A man who could write music one day and order an execution the next. This is the story of Henry VIII, the man who changed England forever. Henry Tudor was born on June 28, 1491, at Greenwich Palace, a royal residence on the banks of the River Thames. He was the second son of King Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. Unlike his older brother Arthur, Henry's destiny was not to rule, but to serve in the shadow of his sibling. His education, however, was none to one. From the age of 6, Henry was trained in Latin, theology, music, and the arts of diplomacy. He excelled at languages, speaking French, Spanish, and some Italian. He was also athletic, mastering archery, hunting, and the dangerous sport of jousting. To his tutors, Henry seemed the embodiment of the Renaissance ideal, a scholar and a warrior in equal measure. But fate had other plans. In April 1502, Arthur, Prince of Wales, suddenly died of illness, leaving young Henry as the sole male heir. The boy who never supposed to wear the crown was now destined to inherit it. For the next 7 years, Henry was kept under close watch by his cautious father, Henry VII. He was rarely allowed into the public eye, and courtiers described him as intelligent but impatient, bursting with youthful energy that could not be contained. Henry VII died in 1509, and at the age of 17, Henry VIII ascended the throne. London erupted in celebration. To the people of England, the new king was everything his father was not. Charming, athletic, generous, and youthful. He was over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and handsome, with a commanding presence that impressed even foreign ambassadors. One of Henry's first acts was to marry Catherine of Aragon, the widow of his late brother Arthur. Catherine was the daughter of King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile, the same monarchs who had sponsored Christopher Columbus. This marriage was not only a union of 2 people, but also a powerful political alliance between England and Spain. At first, Henry and Catherine seemed genuinely devoted. Henry referred to her as the most beautiful woman in the world. Together, they appeared as the perfect royal couple. But beneath the splendor of court life, tragedy struck again and again. Catherine gave birth to 6 children, but only one survived infancy, a daughter, Mary. Henry longed desperately for a son to secure the Tudor dynasty, and the repeated losses weighed heavily on the marriage. Still, for nearly 20 years, Catherine remained Henry's queen and closest confidant. Young Henry hungered for glory on the battlefield. In 1513, he led a campaign into France, hoping to rival the conquests of past English kings like Henry V. Though the battles were limited in scale, Henry presented himself as a triumphant warrior, earning praise from his subjects. Back at home, he surrounded himself with art, music, and the pageantry of the Renaissance. Henry was no mere brute. He composed songs, played the lute, and even wrote treatises on theology.
But behind this glamour was an empire in constant tension. Scotland remained a fierce rival. The nobility often schemed against the crown, and the financial strain of Henry's wars drained England's treasury. To manage affairs, Henry relied on Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, a brilliant churchman who became his chief advisor. For years, Wolsey carried the burdens of state, while Henry enjoyed jousts, hunting expeditions, and lavish feasts. By the late 1520s, Henry's marriage to Catherine was crumbling. Now in her 40s, she was unlikely to bear another child. Henry became convinced that their union was cursed, citing a passage from Leviticus that warned against marrying a brother's widow. But there was another reason for Henry's desire for an annulment, a young lady of the court named Anne Boleyn. Anne was clever, ambitious, and unlike Catherine, she promised the possibility of new heirs. Henry petitioned Pope Clement VII for an annulment, but the Pope, under pressure from Catherine's nephew, the powerful Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, refused. Henry grew impatient. How could a distant pope deny the will of a king? His frustration turned to defiance. With the guidance of advisors like Thomas Cromwell and Thomas Cranmer, Henry began the most radical act of his reign, the break with Rome. In 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring Henry VIII the supreme head of the Church of England. The Pope's authority was abolished, monasteries were dissolved, and vast wealth flowed into the king's coffers. It was one of the greatest religious upheavals in European history, marking the birth of the English Reformation. Henry VIII's personal life became as legendary as his politics. His 6 marriages tell a story of love, betrayal, and ambition. To this day, school children remember them with the rhyme, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Catherine of Aragon, married for love and alliance, but divorced after failing to produce a male heir. Anne Boleyn, charmed Henry, gave birth to Elizabeth, but executed on charges of adultery and treason. Jane Seymour bore Henry's only legitimate son, Edward VI, but died from childbirth complications. Anne of Cleves, a political marriage that Henry quickly annulled, calling her the Flanders Mare. Catherine Howard, a teenage bride, executed for alleged adultery. And Catherine Parr, a steady companion in Henry's final years who outlived him. Each marriage reshaped England's political and religious landscape. Anne Boleyn's execution shocked Europe. Jane Seymour's death left Henry grieving but proud of his son. Catherine Howard's downfall reminded all of the dangers of courtly ambition. And through it all, Henry's health and temper worsened. By the 1540s, the once vigorous king was a shadow of himself. Henry grew obese, weighing nearly 400 pounds. He suffered from painful leg ulcers and required mechanical devices to mount his horse. Courtiers described him as terrifying, prone to violent outbursts and paranoia, yet his mind remained sharp. He expanded England's navy, fortified coastal defenses, and maneuvered diplomatically between France, Spain, and the Protestant states. At home, his dissolution of the monasteries forever transformed English society. The crown seized vast lands, redistributing them among loyal nobles and securing the monarchy's financial independence. But the price was high. Centuries of monastic tradition erased in just a few years. On January 28, 1547, Henry VIII died at Whitehall Palace. He was 55 years old. His body was laid to rest beside Jane Seymour, the wife he had loved most, at Windsor Castle. His passing ended a reign of nearly 38 years, one of the longest in English history. Henry left behind 3 children, each of whom would wear the crown: Edward VI, the sickly boy king; Mary I, who sought to restore Catholicism; and Elizabeth I, who ushered in England's golden age. His break with Rome set England on a new path, shaping the Protestant identity that still endures today. His 6 marriages became legend, his court a symbol of both splendor and brutality. Henry VIII remains a figure of contradiction, a patron of the arts and a tyrant in politics, a loving husband and a ruthless executioner, a Renaissance king who transformed his kingdom and whose shadow still looms over English history today. Thank you for watching Biographical Profiles. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with someone curious about history, and don't forget to subscribe. New stories from the past every week.